A very fresh and energetic morning to one and all present here. I extend a warm welcome to all of you for this gripping and fascinating experience hosted by Asian Education Group, which I'm sure that you all would remember all throughout your life. Before I introduce our eminent guest to all of you, let me share with you all one of his most inspiring quotes, which I personally feel means a lot. Why do stories persuade? There are several explanations. First, people deduce a story by its logic. We know from research and common sense that self discovery is much more powerful than people having talk at you. Indeed, a beautiful thought, and those limited words are weighty enough. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are proud to welcome our most eminent and the most eminent guest, and he's none other than Mr. David Arker. Mr. David Arker, hailed the father of modern branding, serves as vice chairman at Profit, a global growth consultancy. Though he is a man who is probably he does not require any introductions, but let me take you through his prolific career. He is a recognized authority on branding and has developed several recognizable concepts, including the AAKER brand vision model, and has received numerous awards for his contributions to the science of marketing. In 2015, Sir was inducted into the American Marketing Association Hall of Fame for his lifetime achievements in marketing. Mr. Arker has authored and published hundreds of articles and 16 books, including Acker on Branding, 20 Principles That Drive Success, Brand Relevance, Spanning Silos, Brand Portfolio Strategy, Building Strong Brands, etc. His books have been translated in 18 languages and sold over 1 million copies. His words and teachings have offered guidance and inspiration to marketing leadership at many of the world's leading brands. Mr. David Aker has truly given the business word a gift, a highly concise and wonderfully cogent and insightful tutorial on the principles of brand stewardship and leadership. Mr. David Arker is an active branding consultant, professor emeritus at the Haas School of Business, UC Berkeley, and revered speaker and thought leader. He shares insights at conferences and meetings globally as a LinkedIn influencer and on his blog at davidarker.com. He's the creator of the very well-known AAKER model, a marketing model that views brand equity as a combination of brand awareness, brand loyalty, and brand association. The model outlines the necessities of developing a brand identity, which is a unique set of brand associations representing what the brand stands for and offer the customers an aspiring brand image. While all his books, sayings, articles, his speeches have always driven us all towards success. And today, we truly are very excited to hear from him. So, without further ado, I would request Sir to kindly grace us with his knowledge and expertise and share his valued experiences with our students. A very warm welcome to you, Sir. And now I hand over the session to you.
Thank you for that introduction, and thanks for the invitation to come and share my ideas with all the students and faculty at your school. What I'm going to do is really talk about two ideas. One is a strategic idea about how you grow your business, and it's very relevant for any student that's interested in being an entrepreneur and starting his own business or her own business. And second, I'll talk a little bit about how you communicate these days and what the role stories have. Let's see, I'm having trouble advancing. I didn't before. I wonder why. Let's see. Okay, use those arrows. I think I figured out a way. So let me go back a few years to where this idea of growth strategy came from. In Japan, I got a hold of data, about 30, 35 years of data of beer brands in Japan. And if you look at this data, remarkable observation is that only 5 times during that time period did the market share trajectory change. And each of those times you could explain by the creation of a whole new subcategory. It wasn't my brand is better than your brand advertising or promotion. It was some big innovation. And then I looked at computers. And I saw the same thing. There was more of them. There was about 15 of them, but over that same time period, they all involved a new subcategory. The Apple, the Dell, the Sun, the Salesforce, they all changed what people bought in some way. And then I looked at other categories: automobiles, clothing, yogurt, water, airplanes, coffee. It was always the same. The only time you saw growth was when there was a new subcategory formed. And so I came to this conclusion. The only way to grow, the only way, with only rare exceptions, is to own a game-changing subcategory. And so you have to figure out some sort of disruptive innovation that will do that. My brand is better than your brand strategies almost never precipitates growth. Almost never. So if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a strategist and you want to grow your business, you need to look at these ideas for doing so. And digital has put this game-changing subcategory growth on steroids. There are more of them. They grow faster. They have a higher impact. And, that's really because of all the technology around digital, the internet, the GPS, the Internet of Things. It's also because of e-commerce. It gives people access to market, and social media and websites give a way to communicate into that market. So as a result of that, you see all these subcategories more frequently, growing faster, and changing almost every marketplace. So how do you do it? Well, there's 2 things you have to do. The first, you have to define a new subcategory. And you do that by finding what I call must-haves. These are things that customers must have. It's either a new or superior buying or use experience. It doesn't have to be necessarily new, it can be superior, but it has to be markedly superior, or a meaningful brand relationship that didn't exist before, that people value so much they will choose your brand. Let me tell you the story of Airbnb. They started when 2 designers were sitting in their apartment in San Francisco, and they could not pay their rent. And there was a design convention about 5 weeks out, and all the hotels were full. You couldn't get a room, and they decided that they would rent some air mattresses that they had for camping, and they ran some social media ads, and they got 3 takers. They made $1,200 over this 5-day conference, and they paid their rent. Then they did this in Dallas, and they started to realize, if we could find people with extra rooms, we could make a business out of that. 12 years later, Airbnb serves 150 million guests. They have 6 million hosts. They have a business value of $35 billion. That's in 12 years. And what are the must-haves anyway? Well, one is that these hosts are called entrepreneurial hosts. They're not called owner managers. So entrepreneurial means they're innovative. They always try to improve the experience of their guests. And host means that they're concerned about their guest. And it's kind of an attitude, a personality, a feeling as well. And they have all kinds of support. They have the presentation help from Airbnb. They have best innkeeper ideas, mentorships, online community, annual conference. So if you're a host, and Airbnb gives you a lot of support. And then there's Airbnb experiences. As a host, you can take your guests on a hike, or you can take them to the museum, or you take them shopping, take them sailing. And so that's something you can't do it at Marriott or Hyatt. And they have reviews of guests. So if you're somebody renting your room and you're apprehensive, you might get a guest that is not going to treat your house right. You can look at the reviews of that guest in prior experiences. And guests can look at review of hosts as well. So if you're a host that's improved your interaction with their guests, that can show up in these reviews. So a couple of observations about this new subcategory. There's more than one must-have. There's 4 of them. It's always the case. It's never just one. And some of these things have got a lot of emotion, feeling to it. The idea of being an entrepreneurial host, the idea of these experiences, it creates some feeling, some emotion. It's just not rational sort of features of that. And another thing, that these things evolve over time. They didn't have all these support things when they started out. They didn't have Airbnb experiences when they started out. They didn't have these reviews when they started out. So these were added over the 12 years. So the subcategory definition is dynamic. The second thing, you have to become the exemplar brand. That's the brand that represents the market and drives its visibility and positioning. So as a brand, you have the charge of managing the subcategory. It's very much a branding job, but it concerns a subcategory, not just a single brand. The first job of an exemplar is to position the whole subcategory, like Salesforce did with their software when they started in 1999, 21 years ago. It was a cloud software. So they had to tell everybody what the cloud software was like. It was nothing to buy, nothing to maintain, continuous upgrades. You didn't have to look for this expensive, disruptive annual upgrade. And it was secure. And incidentally, it was also cool. It was advanced. It was not obsolete. So to go into the Salesforce world, give you a kind of a feeling as well as rational thinking. Second job, you got to scale. You got to grow as fast as you can, because you want to build a customer base and you want to solidify your exemplar status. Well, how do you do this? One way is you overinvest and you get some financing and you spend it. You overinvest, you develop the subcategory and your ownership of that subcategory. That's what Amazon did. They didn't have any profits. They forego profits for 20 years. They invested all their money in creating more assets and skills that will link them to customers. Another way to do it is to use social media. Dollar Shave Club is a e-commerce organization that sells razors. And when they started, they did a 2-minute video that was extremely funny. It was outrageous. These people were talking about how dumb the big razor companies like Gillette were, and how hard it was to buy, and how expensive it was. And it was just very hilarious. And this video went viral. In 2 days, they got 12,000 subscribers. 2 days, 12,000 subscribers, talking $4,000. I mean, you couldn't do that without social media. They sold their business 4 years later to Unilever for $1 billion. 4 years. And the third job of the exemplar is to build barriers. Now, the strength of the must-haves is one barrier, the base of loyal customers is another, but you can also have branded innovation. Uniqlo has Airism, which is fabric that helps you in the summertime, and Heat Tech, fabric that helps you in the winter. You can have continuous innovation being a moving target. That's what Prius did with their car. And you could have a superior customer support like Amazon does. And that creates a barrier to somebody coming in to your and competing with you. So 3 takeaways. The only way to grow: develop must-haves that define and own game-changing subcategories. Digital puts subcategory growth on steroids, and the exemplar brand positions, scales, and build barriers. So let me turn to creating signature stories next. You know, the importance of strategic messaging internally and externally has never been greater. And it's never been harder to break through the clutter. People have information overload, and there's so much clutter in the marketplace. So it's just really hard to get somebody's attention. And then that introduced the power of stories, because stories is a way to break through. But it's not just any story. It has to be a signature story, which is a once upon a time account of an event or expertise. It's not facts. It's not a description of an offering. Second, it breaks out of the clutter. It has some wow factor. It's so entertaining, so unusual, so informative, so emotional, so intriguing that you have to share it. And 3, it has an authentic strategic message. So let me just give you one example. Signature stories that change perceptions. Barclays. Barclays is a UK bank. In 2012, it was the least trusted major UK bank in the least trusted industry. And they tried everything. They ran ads, said, we're not really that bad. And besides, we changed, and nothing. So in 2013, they developed a new purpose. Basically, it was to help people achieve their ambitions. And their employees went out and developed programs compatible with that purpose. And 4 of these programs were under the umbrella called Digital Eagles. They would teach people how to thrive in the digital world. And so this was a mission of some of the employees that did start out with 17. Now there's 17,000 Digital Eagles at Barclays. Running soccer is a soccer game in which there's no running, no contact, 6 per side. And if you're a little bit older, you can't run very well anymore, you're injured, and you really love soccer, you can play no running soccer. So we have the story of Steve Rich, who had really rejuvenated his life because of running soccer. But he wanted to raise interest in the sport. He wanted to connect people with teams. He wanted to organize a national tournament. So he turned to Digital Eagles, and they helped him build the digital platform to do that. And so they made a video of Steve Rich. It's a very emotional. You see his wife. You see what running soccer has done to him. You see how Digital Eagles helped. And they told this story on the video. And 20 months into the program, trust was up 33%, 6 times the prior advertising. Consideration up 130%, 5 times the prior advertising. And there was 5,000 positive mentions in press. Before that, all you had was all this negative stuff about Barclays, how bad they were, how they caused the 2008 financial collapse. It was Barclays' fault. It was awful. So that really changed them around. And it did this by, first of all, gaining attention. You didn't want to read anything about Barclays, but you did want to hear the story of Rich. And it discounted from counter-arguing. That's enormously important because when you get through with a normal communication, people will be skeptical. They'll counter-argue, but not if it's a story. And it created liking and feelings that were transformed to Barclays brand. One more is the story at UC Health. It's University of California Regional Health. And I encourage you to look at their website, UC Health, and look at some of their stories. It's just amazing. One of them is about Becky, who had a heart incident at Breckenridge ski area, had to be helicoptered to Boulder, where their big hospital was. Her heart was completely wasted, gone. So she had to sit there waiting for a transplant. And one day the doctor came in and she said, "Do we have a heart?" And he said, "Yes." So the heart transplant team went and transplanted the heart. She recovered. And we hear her story. It makes you cry. It's so emotional. And then we have another video where Becky goes to help the mother of the girl that donated her heart. And that really makes you cry. And so what we see here is this emotional connection. It's very inspirational. And we see the competence of the hospital and the doctors is discovered by the viewer, because no mention of that appears in the video. And Manny Rodriguez, the chief marketing officer of that, said, stop talking about yourself. Tell stories about your client, because that's their values. Comes first. So takeaways. Signature stories are powerful. Facts are not. Signature stories get attention, change perceptions, persuade, energize, stimulate action. And to find them is challenging, but it's worthwhile. So anyway, that's my thoughts, and let's move on to Q&A.
Well, thank you so much for such informative session. And a lot of students are inquisitive to, know more from you. They've sent us their questions. With your permission, sir, can we start with the question and answer round?
Sure.
Okay. So with the firms fighting it out for increasing their market share in a highly competitive environment, they're putting a lot of emphasis on making their own set of customers brand loyal. As per you, what all steps should a firm take to do well in this aspect?
Well, what you have to do is connect with the customer in some way. And of course, you can do that functionally by delivering products that they want, products that work well. But usually that's not enough. And usually what you need to do is to have some other form of connection. It could be some emotional connection that comes from shared interests. If you form a brand community around a shared interest, like Harley Davidson did with their motorcycles, people that shared an interest in riding motorcycles, taking trips. Or Sephora did with beauty talk, with women that are interested in beauty. And Estee did with crafts, the people that are interested in crafts. So you are given the social benefit of having people that have the similar interests with you that you can talk to and exchange ideas and throw out questions and problems. And but as far as loyalty goes, that provides a connection between you and the brand that you can't really get from any logical thinking. And these stories really help you too, because stories provide a sense that you really get to know the brand through these stories, and these stories can illustrate that the brand is something you respect, something you admire, something maybe that it inspires you, and that provides a level of loyalty and commitment that you can't get just by explaining how great your offering is.
So there are companies that manage different ranges of products under the same brand name, whereas there would be a few that prefer to have different brand names rather. As per you, which one is a better strategy and why one type of strategy may be preferred over the other?
Well, there is no one better strategy. In my new book, my next book will be on social programs, and in that I delve deep into two companies. One is Salesforce, that has gone from 0 in 20 years to a $35 billion company. They dominate the cloud computing software area, and everything is sold under the Salesforce name. And the Salesforce have a lot of brands that help support that name. They've got a social program called 111. You give 1% of your people's time, 1% of your product, and 1% of your profits to further the community or the society or the planet. They have a brand called Trailblazers, which is a community of users that get together, a brand community. They brand their annual meeting called Dreamforce, but everything's sold under the Salesforce brand. And so they do have other brands, but it all supports the Salesforce brand. And this is this is called a master brand strategy, and it allows them to be very efficient. It allows them to spend all their money behind the Salesforce brand. They're not dividing their brand building budget into 50 slices. It's one. Everything goes there. And it helps them, they have to put the brand into different countries, different setups, so they have the problem of being consistent. But there's a lot of efficiencies to that. The other company I do is called Unilever. And Unilever has over, I think, 200 brands. They have at least 40 or 50 major brands. And all those brands are sold under a brand name. They have $12 billion brands. And so they have brands like Lifebuoy soap, Dove, Ben & Jerry's, Axe, and Ono, and it just goes on. And customers of those brands don't even know that they're Unilever. There's nothing on the package. There's nothing to let them know it's Unilever. So they have a relationship with Lifebuoy or Dove or Axe. And so that means their brand building budget is divided literally in 40 different piles. And very little goes to build the Unilever brand, relatively speaking. And however, that each of these brands can create a brand that's perfect for their product in their market. And you can have two brands. I think they have 8 or 9 brands that are cleaning products, soap and body wash and things like that. 8 or 9. Now, because they have 8 or 9, they can dominate different segments with different brands. And if they sold them all under the Unilever soap brand, in fact, I mean, what would you rather buy? A soap called Unilever, or a soap called Dove, or a soap called Lifebuoy? I mean, Lifebuoy and Dove are better brands, even if you don't know anything about them. They're better brand names. Unilever, if you're saddled with that for everything, it wouldn't be as powerful in the marketplace. So anyway, that's the answer. There is no right answer. It all depends on your business strategy, and it depends on the kind of products and the kind of customers.
Okay, great, sir. So we have amongst us one of our students from PGDM, Anushka Tyagi, who's live with us, and she has a question to ask. Anushka, please unmute yourself.
Good morning from India, sir. I'm Anushka Tyagi, a student of PGDM at Asian Business School. My question for you is, you have always emphasized on the fact that brands decline not because they lose their ability or customer loyalty, but because they become redundant and eventually irrelevant. What does it mean to be a relevant brand, especially in digital age?
What does it mean to be a what?
What does it mean to be a relevant brand in digital age?
To be a relevant brand or be irrelevant?
A relevant brand.
Well, this has to do with my subcategory competition discussion. What's happening when you create a new subcategory and you become the exemplar brand? You make other brands irrelevant, not relevant, because you have created some must-haves that they lack, and so they cease to be relevant. To be relevant is defined by me as being visible and credible. So if you're not visible and credible for a certain application, then you're not even considered, and you lose relevance. So, for example, if you look at this beer data, when Kirin had 60% share for 15 years, and then Asahi came in with Super Dry, which was a dry beer. It was positioned for the young person, not the older beer drinker. And the market share of Kirin fell from 50 to 40% in 1 year. And what was happening is Kirin, for that group, became not relevant anymore. Because if you were a young person that wanted a beer that was crisper, more alcohol, less aftertaste, Kirin was no longer relevant. It was still visible, but it wasn't credible. It wouldn't deliver what you wanted. So therefore, if you're Kirin, you have become irrelevant for 20% of your marketplace. You become irrelevant. And you did that because somebody else created a new subcategory. So that's how you become irrelevant. So if you're a big player like Kirin, you have to be very concerned about little guys starting these subcategories, because they could grow and pretty soon take 20% of your business or more. And so you have to, the best way is to be the person that the company establishes a subcategory instead of having somebody else do it. But that's hard to do for a lot of reasons. But if you see a subcategory, then maybe you introduce a product into that area and try to improve on it. That's one way. Another way of becoming not relevant is just to lose energy, to be tired, to be yesterday's brand, to be your grandfather's brand, to be uninteresting, some brand that nobody talks about. So that's another way to be irrelevant. And the danger of that should lead you to find ways to put energy into your brand.
Thank you, sir. That answers my question. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. So, as per you, how do firms need to reposition their brands in the new normal post-COVID with the old product line?
Say that again.
As per you, how do firms need to reposition their brands in the new normal post-COVID with the old product line?
Well, it all depends on their situation. There's no general answer to that. Most of them don't have to reposition their brand at all. But there are some brands that will be influenced. There are some things that I think you need to think about. I think that with the COVID virus, a lot of people are a little bit lonely, a little bit introspective, a little bit more conscious of meaning in their life, which means that it's even more important to be authentic, to tell the truth, to not appear as phony or contrived or selling. I mean, that was always the case, but I think nowadays that people are going to respect those people that are authentic, that are real. And I think that the importance of social purpose and social programs is more important. I mean, what people say about the COVID is that it hasn't really changed any of the trends, it's just accelerated them. And so there's been a big movement toward organizations wanting to have a social purpose, to have social programs, and that's really accelerated with the COVID. I think that we see more and more that firms are themselves introspective and emotional and looking for meaning. Why is my business here? And it's not good enough to say we're here to make money. We're here to improve our profits, our sales. That just doesn't work for anymore. So the question is, how can you develop a social purpose that works for you, that's meaningful, and it's something you can contribute to as a company? So I think those are two things I would think that would be sort of trends that are accelerated by the experience we've had with the COVID.
Sure. So we have one live question here. A student has sent us this question. She wants to know about any famous marketing model of some famous brand that you personally like a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, I like Unilever and Salesforce, and I like a lot of the brands that I've worked with. Like Unilever's Lifebuoy is one of my favorite brands. Their Help a Child Reach 5 program, and UC Health. These brands that have created these great stories. I really like them, and I think that one of the most intriguing brands is one that I've worked with over the years, and that's the Haas Berkeley brand. And they applied my model, my thinking, and I worked with them on it. And we came up with four principles. And I was just looking to see if I could. Yeah, we put this on a card, 4 principles, and it's question the status quo, confidence without attitude, students always, and beyond yourself. So all those really represent Berkeley Haws, and confidence without attitude has been absolutely a home run differentiator for Berkeley Haws, because most of the top MBA programs in the world, the students are kind of got an attitude. The students really think that they're hot stuff, and so does the faculty. And so recruiters that come there, it's really a painful process to talk to these students, but not at Berkeley Haws. Confidence without attitude. If you apply to Berkeley Haws, you've got to write an essay explaining why you are a fit for an organization with that characteristic. And so they end up with students that are even more so blessed with confidence without attitude. And students want to come there because of that. Recruiters want to recruit there because of that. Professors want to join the faculty because of that. And so it's really an example of how a branding exercise could end up changing the institution so dramatically and allowing them to communicate so dramatically what they have.
Sir, we have amongst us Dr. Anubhuti Dwivedi, who is the Dean of Asian Business School. She also has a question for you, sir. Ma'am, over to you.
A very good evening, sir, and good morning from India. Sir, while going through your work, basically on the signature stories majorly, just one thing came to my mind, sir, that we actually are living in a world which is highly social networked today, I think more than ever. And on the other hand, we talk of individualism also, like more than ever, I would again say. Now, how to combine these two aspects into a personal brand for the professional success?
I didn't understand. Personal brand? You mean a brand of a person?
Yes, sir.
And so could you say again what the question is?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So like
it's about personal branding, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's about personal branding. So like we are very much into social networking, all of us as professionals, and there are certain social influences always coming up. And on the other hand, we live in a world which talks of individualism all the time, like you should have your individual mark and so on. Now, how to combine these two aspects, especially as a student, as a professional, when they enter into the corporate world, how do they combine these two aspects, that they become individualistic as well as have an influence in social media or in the social networking to create a personal brand which is effective?
That's a really good question. I never thought of that one before. But first of all, if you break it down, first of all, personal branding is is really a powerful concept. And my daughter keeps telling me I got to write a book on personal branding, but I haven't gotten to that. But I do have a chapter in this creating signature stories on personal brand. I think I do, in one of the books I do anyway. But it makes so much sense. Your brand is so important to your career, and so it makes sense to sit down and think to yourself, what are my assets and strengths? What is my career objective? What are the alternative paths? And what do I want to stand for? When people see me, what do they want me to say? He's fun, he's humorous, he's energetic, he's smart, he's creative, he's a strategy, he's a process guy, gets things done. How do I want to be known as? that sort of fits my strengths and my direction. It just makes common sense to do that, even though nobody does it almost. But it would really pay off if you did, and then review it every once in a while. Now, once you decide how, and incidentally, you could do this for your social side and your professional side. You could do it twice. But then once you know what you want to stand for, that says so much about how you behave and so forth. And then, but the social media is really an interesting twist to it. And your behavior and how you dress and how you interact and what you talk about is certainly should apply to the social media. It should, give you some indications which is off brand and what is on brand. And I think that there's a few people that will have an opportunity to use social media to create a brand. They can do that through a website. They can do that through podcasts. They can do that through blogs. Now, very few professionals can pull that off. But if you're one of those that can, that should be an option for you. If you're really good at telling stories, or you're really good at understanding of some narrow part of your field, and you could be the go-to place, website and blog or something, and build up a following. And so there's a lot of books that tell you how to do that. How to become get a huge following on Twitter or Facebook, and or to get a blog following or a podcast following. And podcast is sort of a huge medium now. And if you're one of the few people that could actually get a presence on there, you should consider doing that.
Thank you so much, sir.
Well, thank you so much, sir. So, do you believe that marketing strategies should be based on the organization's value or generating more revenue?
Or generating what?
Generating more revenue. Should it be, profit-based?
More venue? What?
I'll just repeat the question, sir.
Okay.
Do you believe that marketing strategies should be based on the organization's value or generating more revenue?
Revenue, you mean?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Well, I think, and that's the subject of my next book, I believe that it should do both. I don't think you should choose between them, because if you have a higher purpose, and I think that's what you mean by values, if you have a higher purpose, something more than sales and profits of driving your company and connecting you to employees and investors and the customers, then you need to develop social programs. But if these social programs are just sort of like giving money away, they're philanthropic. First of all, they won't be very effective at doing much of anything. But second of all, that means that you're kind of a dead weight on the organization. And I think the commitment of the organization to something like that is going to come under stress. And your social program is going to have a smaller chance of being a viable, energetic, innovative, long-term force in the social problem area you're addressing. You look at Lifebuoy's Help a Child Reach 5, and that Lifebuoy spends a lot of money on that, and they do these marvelous things. They're trying to get 1 billion people to wash their hands better. They've already got 500 million. They've saved lives. Something like 2 million kids before 5 die each year, and they've cut that down. And they created a video around 3 towns that got their program. And in these towns, they told the story of a mother in the town and how one mother lost a child, and in another town, somebody was celebrating the fact they didn't. And these stories were just very impactful, a lot of emotion, 3-minute videos. They got 44 million views. 44 million views. This is a bar soap. You think of any other way that a bar soap could get that kind of energy and vitality and visibility? There's no way. So this program to help children survive through better hand washing, it fits Lifebuoy, and it gives the Lifebuoy brand an enormous lift. I mean, people like it more, people respect it more, it's more visible, it's more credible. Everything, it's just such a win-win. Now, if they would pick some program that was sort of behind the scenes, it didn't get much visibility, and it wasn't very related to what they make, their soap or their heritage. They started off 120 years ago to provide a soap that would prevent an epidemic that was then in England. It wouldn't have the support, it wouldn't have the understanding, it wouldn't have the access to the resources of Lifebuoy. So I think you have to do both. And I think you can't get along with doing one over the other. I think you have to do both.
Sure. So we have another student here, Siddhant Morgan. He's our undergrad BBA student. Siddhant, you can please unmute yourself and put your question across.
Good morning, sir. My question to you is that is brand as a person is becoming more and more important than the brand as a product in product industry, and is service branding more challenging than product branding?
I didn't follow that. Could you try again?
Sure,
Siddhant,
sir.
can you please break your question? Just ask the first part first.
Sure, ma'am. Sir, is brand as a person is becoming more and more important?
Brand as a person, did you say?
As a product.
Brand as a person? Is that what you said?
Sir, is brand as a person becoming more and more important than brand as a product in the product industry?
Okay. Well, the whole concept of brand personality is a very powerful one, because when you try to implement a brand building strategy, if you understand its personality, that tells you a lot about the kinds of things you can do and the kinds of things you can't do. And it also gives you freedom to do some really interesting things. So brand personality is very powerful. And in general, I mean, it's hard to generalize it. Everything is idiosyncratic, but in general, a brand personality is really most useful in packaged goods and other consumer products. When you get into services like banking services and consulting services, it's not so much a personality thing. It's more an organizational values and organizational qualities that's more important, because if you're in a service business, you're really engaging in the organization. So usually in a service business, when we do a brand identity or brand vision exercise, brand personality rarely comes out. It's more organizational values are the kinds of things that tend to come out. But in packaged goods, then we have more likely to have a personality attribute that contributes. So it really depends on the situation. But some of these, like the Dollar Shave Club, for example, has an amazing personality brand. It's outrageous. It's so humorous. And it's the kind of thing you want to drink beer with, the kind of person you want to drink beer with. And it's just over the top outrageous. Now, if you're a big company like Gillette, you can't be over the top outrageous and do all these stupid things. But this company gets away with it. So it's really a personality brand.
So the continuation part is that is service branding more challenging than the product branding?
Oh, I don't think so. It really depends on the situation. There's so many variables that there's different brandings. There's different branding challenges in every different context and situation. And I don't think you could say that service branding is more or less difficult. Again, service branding, you almost always get involved in the organizational culture, the organizational values, the ability of the organization to have a face, relationship, and deliver services. So, but on the other, so if you have a great organization, a great culture, you're going to do really well, and it's going to be an easy branding job. If you've got a weak organization with a weak culture or a wrong culture, it's going to be pretty hard to, make much progress with branding.
Thank you so much, sir. So we have amongst us Professor Vinod Dhar, who is a professor for marketing and branding at Asian Education Group. He has a question to ask, sir. Over to you, sir.
Yes, good evening, sir. So some of my students are keen to know as to how the process of branding is different in the consumer products as compared to the business products. So I would request you to throw some light on it. So basically, it's like students want to know that what's the difference in branding for B2C sales versus B2B sales?
Well, B2B sales is again, like service, like in the service sector, the B2B sector is almost always involved with the organization. Because in the B2B situation, you have a relationship with the organization. You're buying a whole organization. You're just not buying a product. So for a B2B, the organization is really important. For B2C, it usually is not. There's exceptions, but usually in a B2C situation, you're more concerned with a brand personality or maybe the events that they sponsor or they're connected with, like Avon Walk for Breast Cancer, for example, or Samsung made a big splash with Olympic sponsorship. So you probably have those kinds of things in B2C firms, but B2B, it's organization is really important.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. So there's again a live question from a student who's just sent this question across. He wants to know that how is experiential marketing changing the business models and helping in building a local company into a brand?
What was the question?
How is experiential marketing changing the business models and how is it helping a local company build a brand?
Okay. Well, experiential marketing is one of the hot topics in marketing. And so in the last 5 or 10 years, everybody's interested in looking at the customer relationship, starting with the customer experience. So what people typically do is to model the customer experience and look at all stages of it to see how it could be improved or made more efficient. And so experiential marketing is almost a whole field in and of itself. And so if you're a student, that's sort of maybe one route to take is the experiential marketing. So anyway, it's there's been developed books and systems to do experiential marketing, and it's definitely on everybody's top of their list of things to do.
Sure, sir. Sir, actually, our students are so inquisitive. They're just sending us so many questions. I would like to know if we have more time. We just have 2-3 more questions.
Yeah, maybe 1 or 2 more questions, or 3 is okay.
Okay. Sure, sir. Thank you so much. So, with a lot of firms these days putting emphasis on social issues to showcase themselves well on CSR front, do you really believe in doing so, or is it just another way of rebranding themselves?
Well, it can be if they're inauthentic and they are just trying to make themselves look better, or if they're more likely. I think that actually that's not so common. I don't think. I think the more common problem is people that really want to make a difference. They really want to do something that's worthwhile, but they're not capable of it. They're just not good at it, and so they end up, being pretty ineffective. Not because they have that kind of attitude you're talking about. It's just because it's not so easy. It's not so easy to find the right social purpose, the right social programs. It's not so easy to, to run them well, and to allow them to help the business, which I said before is an important characteristic. It's just hard. And you look at what Unilever has done it again and again and again, and that's why it's such an impressive company to me. But I think it is, as I told you before, there's a trend toward social purpose, and more companies want to have it. Maybe all companies, and they're struggling to get it right, and so there's a lot of learning to do.
Sure. Sir, actually now this is something which has come up and most of the students, I would not say just in India, but all over the world want to become entrepreneurs. So from their perspective, big giants like Coca-Cola, Apple, they've taken decades to build their brand identity. What would you suggest to these young entrepreneurs? What steps should they take to develop their own distinct brand identity?
Well, I think they just have to look in the mirror and start out by saying, what do they want to be? How do they want to be known? And what fits with their own personality, their own skills, what they have to offer. And then comes the task of communicating that some way. And but you go back to the Dollar Shave Club that I mentioned already. I mean, here's a guy that didn't have very much money. He created a video, a 2-minute video that got 12,000 subscribers, and that got him started. And he did it in 2 days. I mean, you couldn't do that 10 years ago. So the opportunity now to use social media to get a splash, and the opportunity to have a personality, to be outrageous, to be humorous. The big guys can't do that. So you have a lot of routes that they cannot take. And so you can really be different and maybe get some visibility that way.
Right. I think so. As you said, that brand is a personality. So maybe students need to find out as an entrepreneur, how are they different? And that needs to be showcased to become a brand.
Yeah. And I tell you, my book on creating game-changing subcategories, I think is really helpful to an entrepreneur, especially the area where it talks about being the exemplar brand, and what role that has to growing fast and owning a new subcategory.
Right. I'm sure our students would love to read that book and gain the knowledge from there. Sir, as per you, how can organizations convey their core values through branding?
Can weigh their core values?
Convey
Well,
their core, like exhibit their core values through branding.
well, branding represents the core values. I mean, that's what a brand is.
Mhm.
And so if you talk about what you want your brand to stand for,
Right.
the corporate values is certainly going to be probably part of that, especially if you're in a B2B or a service business. And also it's probably important if you're communicating your brand internally to employees, then it's more likely that the corporate values would be a part of that.
Okay. So one last question in this section. What, according to you, is one of the most common mistakes that even well-established businesses make while branding their products, and how can this be avoided?
I don't think there's one common mistake. It's really a complex field, branding, and it really depends on the company. It depends on the kind of offering and the kinds of markets and where you are. If you're a startup versus mature versus somebody that's trying to change. So I think I don't think there's a single problem. Although I think in these days, I guess if there would be one problem, I would think is that people sometimes don't take the opportunity to create a new subcategory when it comes along, because that's really the route to huge success and huge growth in sales. And it's usually risky. It's usually taking money away from more sure investments. And so there's a lot of reasons why people don't do it. But I guess if there's one mistake, it's that people don't run with their opportunity to create a new subcategory, and they don't understand the role of branding in doing so. Becoming the exemplar brand is just really important, and a lot of strategists don't think in those terms.
Sure. So we have a little rapid fire round here. So we'll have some fun questions asked, and we want you to be very spontaneous and hearty with this section. So shall we go ahead?
Sure.
So you are a role model to millions of people. Who is your role model?
Well, gosh, I don't know. It depends on the context. For some things, it's my wife. Some things, it's my daughters. For some things, it's some of my colleagues. I've always been impressed with Peter Drucker and his influence, and but there's so many people really that have been influenced me professionally. It would be hard to.
But surely you're inclined towards your family more for this.
Well, for some things, like they're very, they're really good at some things I would like to be better at.
Sure. So the most memorable day of your college life, which you still remember?
Well, I don't know. I was on a tennis team when I was in college, and I remember we were playing against Army. There's a college where they train people to be Army people, and the night before I had a big party, and I was very very sick, and I went out and I played the best tennis I'd ever played, because I just focused on watching the ball and not making mistakes. So that was a memorable time.
Great. Who or what is your biggest strength?
Biggest strength?
Yes.
Well, I think it's conceptualizing new areas. I've been able to several times conceptual new areas within branding. I've been able to, I think, advance the field in several areas. So I think it'd be conceptualizing and structuring ideas.
Okay, great. So which one do you value the most amongst the following options? Ethics, fame, money, or respect?
I think respect.
Okay, in all regards, respect. Great,
Yeah.
sir. What comes to your mind when I take the following words? So I'll give you a few words, and what is that one spontaneous thing that comes to your mind? Life.
Oh, just living for the day and enjoying life.
Okay. Branding.
Well, I just think branding is strategic. It's all about building assets.
Love.
Well, it's about relationships and
Okay. Fear.
what?
Fear.
Feel?
Yeah. Fear. Fear.
Fear. Fear.
Yes, sir. Fear.
Oh, fear.
Right.
Oh, I see. Well, I always want to do my best, so I always am apprehensive about doing less than my best work.
That's great, sir. And passion?
I really have a passion for trying to help organizations run their business more strategically and with more of a and use branding to do that.
Sure. Sir, if you had a chance to choose another profession other than a branding consultant, what would that be?
Well, I'm really interested in organizational issues, and so maybe organizational behavior.
Okay. Okay, so something related to OB and HR.
Yeah.
Okay. A branding statement that defines you completely.
Gosh, I don't know. You get everybody to answer these questions?
So just last two questions.
Yeah, I don't know. I like to think I'm humorous and witty and fun to be with.
Great. We look forward to that, sir. What is an ultimate day of relaxation for you?
I do a lot of biking and golfing.
Okay, great. So one last thing, one life lesson that you would like to share with our students and a message for all the students at Asian Education Group.
Oh, I don't know, but I do think that marketing and branding is a really fun area. It's a lot more fun and interesting than economics, finance, or accounting.
Okay, great. Well, indeed, sir, with this, we're going to wrap up the session. And it was indeed a very, very enjoyable, experiential, and a resourceful session for us. And thank you so much for gracing us with your presence today, sir, for giving us time. And I
Okay.
extend a very, very hearty gratitude and thanks to you, sir, on behalf of Asian Education Group, all the directors, faculty members, students who are present here, and the entire fraternity. And we would like to acknowledge your presence, sir, by presenting a memento to you. Can we please have the memento?
Oh,
That's for you, sir.
oh, thank you.
Once
My
again,
pleasure.
It was indeed a pleasure, sir, having you here, and we look forward to your guidance always in future and a strong association with you in future as well.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, sir.